My name is Diana Campbell, and the day my mother almost killed my baby started like any other summer morning in Boston. The air was heavy, thick with that sticky kind of heat that makes everything feel harder than it already is. I opened the window of my tiny second-floor apartment, took a deep breath, and tried to convince myself I was ready for the day. I wasn't. I hadn't really been ready for a day in a long time. Lily. Mommy's sweet angel, I whispered, tying my hair back in a messy ponytail. Let's do our best together today, okay? She was curled up in her crib, just 7 months old, blinking those big blue eyes at me like she was trying to figure out the world. It took her a little longer than most babies to focus, to respond. But when she finally stretched her tiny hand toward me, I smiled. I leaned down and kissed her soft forehead. That little gesture was enough to make everything else disappear, at least for a second. I moved fast through the kitchen, juggling her bottle prep while checking the time, already behind again. Being late was a habit I hated, but it was hard to avoid when you're doing everything on your own. Daycare drop-offs, a full-time job at an accounting firm, pediatrician appointments, cooking, cleaning. There wasn't a single moment in my day that belonged to me. Still, I never let Lily see me break. I wouldn't do that to her. The phone rang just as I was about to grab the diaper bag. I glanced at the screen. My mother. I hesitated, my stomach clenching, then picked up. "Good morning, Mom." Her voice, as always, was cold, sharp. "Haley is planning a dinner this afternoon. An important announcement. You've been asked to come." Of course, it was never a real invitation, more like a summons. I cleared my throat. "I have a pediatrician appointment for Lily today, and work." "You can reschedule the appointment," she snapped, cutting me off. "It's a family gathering. Haley wants you there too." I wanted to say no, to explain that rearranging Lily's appointments wasn't simple, that I was already drowning. But I was too tired to fight, too worn down for another pointless argument. I just sighed. "All right, what time?" 6. The usual place. Then, her tone dropped even colder. "If you're bringing that child, make sure she's properly dressed. Don't embarrass everyone like last time." She hung up before I could respond. That child. She couldn't even say her name. Her own granddaughter. I stood there holding the phone, heart racing, eyes stinging. I'd lost count of how many times my mother had made me feel like I didn't belong. Like Lily didn't belong. Like we were stains on her perfect little picture. Lily was born with developmental delays. The doctors hadn't given a final diagnosis yet, but they mentioned early signs of cerebral palsy. I remember sitting in that hospital room, just me and the echo of those words. My husband, Robert, was long gone by then. He left when I was 7 months pregnant, said he needed time to think. Then disappeared. No calls, no messages, just gone. His phone was disconnected, and his parents acted like they had no idea where he was. I stopped asking, stopped hoping. I faced every ultrasound alone, gave birth alone, held Lily for the first time with no one waiting outside that hospital room. And when the doctors told me she might need special care for the rest of her life, I accepted it alone. But I didn't fall apart. I couldn't. I had Lily. She was the only thing in my life that made sense anymore. The only reason I got out of bed every day. The only reason I didn't scream when my mother criticized me for the 1,000th time. Or when my sister, perfect Haley, sent smiling family photos from her spotless life, with her lawyer husband and 2 healthy kids. Everyone adored Haley. She was the one with the picture-perfect life. Meanwhile, I was just Diana. The mistake, the burden, the single mom with the difficult child. But as I held Lily and slung the diaper bag over my shoulder that morning, I looked down at her and whispered, "You are not a burden. You are my everything." And no matter what my mother said, no matter what the world thought, I would never let Lily feel the way I had felt my whole life. Unwanted. Unworthy. We were late again. But it didn't matter, because we were still standing, still surviving, and I had no idea what that day was going to bring. The moment I stepped into the restaurant, I could feel the eyes on me. Not curious or welcoming, just the kind of glances that made you shrink a little without realizing. I held Lily a little tighter, against my chest, her soft cheek brushing my collarbone as I walked in. The Campbell family had already gathered, just as I expected. Elegant dresses, polished shoes, champagne glasses. And then there was me, hair pulled back, wearing the only dress I owned that didn't wrinkle in the diaper bag. Frances was seated, at the head of the long table, wearing a navy dress that probably cost more than my rent. She looked up as I walked in and glanced at her watch. "You're late," she said flatly. I nodded. Daycare was a little crowded. I asked one of the servers if they had a high chair for Lily, but before he could answer, my mother cut in sharply. "Keep her on your lap. I don't want her causing a scene again." I looked her in the eye, trying to keep my voice calm. "Mom, Lily is a quiet child." Before she could reply, Haley stood up with a warm smile. "I can hold her if you want." I exhaled, relieved, and passed Lily into her arms. "Thanks." Haley cradled her gently and said, "Hello, my sweet niece," brushing her lips against Lily's cheek. Lily blinked up at her, slowly trying to focus. Her reactions were always a little delayed, but in that moment, I saw a tiny flicker of light in her eyes. Something soft, curious. I gave Haley a grateful smile as she sat back down. She really had always been kind to Lily. I won't deny that. But even that kindness had a weight to it. Like everything Haley did just reminded me how far behind I was. How different my life looked from hers. Frances cleared her throat. "So," she said, folding her napkin, "what's the big announcement?" Haley and Tom shared a glance, and then Haley beamed. "Actually, we're having another baby." The table erupted into cheers. Champagne glasses clinked, and Frances reached out to grasp both of Haley's hands across the table. "Wonderful. A third child. You've been so blessed." "I'm 3 months along," Haley said, still glowing. "And this time, I want to have a proper celebration. A big baby shower." Frances lit up. "Of course, I'll arrange everything. How about that resort hotel in Cape Cod? Maybe we can book the Ocean View suite." "That sounds lovely," Haley said. "Let's do the first weekend of next month. Everyone, keep your schedules open." Then she looked at me. "You and Lily have to come too. I want the whole family to celebrate together." I smiled, but it didn't quite reach my eyes. "Of course. Congratulations." The conversation carried on around the table, full of laughter and planning, but I stayed quiet. I just held Lily's little hand, watching her eyes flutter around the noisy room. She looked a little nervous. I leaned down and whispered, "It's okay, baby. Mommy's here." And I meant it. I looked around that table, the expensive wine, the gleaming silverware, my sister's perfectly dressed children bouncing in their seats, everyone laughing without a care in the world. And then there was me, the single mom with the quiet baby, no husband, no glow, just enough money to get by and a diaper bag filled with medical appointment reminders. That's the thing about being around family. They know exactly where you come from, and they never let you forget where you didn't end up. It wasn't just that my mother favored Haley. It was that she saw Lily as something broken, an inconvenience, something to hide. But when I looked at my daughter, with her tiny fingers wrapped around mine, I didn't see broken. I saw strength. I saw light. I saw the one thing in this world that had kept me from falling apart. And in that moment, surrounded by people who would never understand, never truly welcome her, I made myself a promise. Lily would never feel like I did. Never feel like she was less. Not even once. I would protect her. Even from my own family if I had to. The resort was breathtaking. The kind of place you see in magazines or on postcards. White walls shining in the morning sun. Marble floors that clicked beneath expensive shoes and chandeliers that looked like they could light up the sky. As the taxi pulled away behind me, I held Lily close and took a deep breath. The salty breeze from the ocean brushed past us, soft but sharp, and I whispered, "Look, Lily, the ocean." Inside, everything was already in motion. Pale pink and white balloons floated near the ceiling, and fresh flowers were tucked into every corner of the lobby. There was a giant banner that read, "Welcome Baby Number 3, stretched across the terrace windows. Every detail had been carefully picked. Everything was perfect. Too perfect. "Diana, you finally made it," Haley called out as she rushed over. She was glowing in a soft blue maternity dress, and somehow even more beautiful than the last time. I saw her. She kissed Lily's cheek, then hugged me. "Everyone's out on the terrace. Tom's parents are here too, and Mom's been directing things since sunrise." Of course she had. Haley's voice was kind, and her smile was warm, but I still felt the space between our worlds. She offered to show me to the room they'd reserved for me and Lily in case we needed a break. I thanked her, though I already knew I'd end up needing it. Walking out onto the terrace was like stepping into a different life. There were about 30 guests, all of them dressed in soft, polished colors. Everyone held champagne flutes. Laughter floated through the air. A chef in a white coat was carving delicate little hors d'oeuvres by a long buffet table. I didn't recognize most of the faces. Maybe distant relatives, maybe people from Tom's side. It didn't matter. Their expressions were all the same. Slight smiles, quiet stares. That polite kind of pity no one wants to admit to. I spotted Frances near the buffet table, talking with an older woman I vaguely remembered as someone from Tom's family. Her silver dress shimmered under the afternoon sun. And when she saw me approaching, her smile froze. Just for a second. Then it returned, practiced and polished. "Diana," she said, kissing my cheek quickly. "This is Caitlin Winrop, Tom's aunt." "Nice to meet you," I said quietly. Caitlin looked down at Lily. "So this is your little one. She's very sweet. Thank you," I replied, though I could hear what wasn't being said. Frances turned the conversation before I could respond further. "Come. Haley's opening her gifts soon. Let's not keep everyone waiting." I nodded, holding Lily tighter as I followed them. We stood on the edge of the crowd, away from the laughter, where Lily could stay calm. Loud noises and strangers made her anxious. I watched as Haley sat down in a chair in the center of the terrace, surrounded by her husband and her 2 children. She looked so content, so celebrated. With each gift she unwrapped, the table erupted in awes and "so cute" as tiny designer baby clothes, hand-stitched toys, silver keepsake boxes. Frances hovered nearby, beaming, fussing, proud. And I stood there in silence, swaying gently with Lily in my arms. I hadn't brought a gift. I wanted to. But Lily's medical bills had wiped out what little I'd saved. Last week, I chose therapy over groceries. There was nothing left for presents. A couple of guests came by, said hello, made small talk. But no one asked about Lily. No one asked how I was. Every word felt rehearsed, every glance a reminder of how far I'd fallen from whatever standard this family pretended to live by. And then I heard her, Frances. Her voice behind me, low but not quiet enough. She always had poor judgment, no eye for choosing a husband. And now she's raising a disabled child all on her own. It's really just a shame. I didn't move. I didn't turn around. But I felt something break inside me, something that had already cracked too many times. I carried Lily back to the room they'd given us, closed the door, sat down on the bed and held her close to my chest. She looked up at me with those big blue eyes, so soft, so pure. And I whispered, "You are not a shame. You are not a mistake." Tears burned behind my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. I couldn't. Not in front of her. "You're perfect, baby," I said. "And no matter what they say, no matter how they look at us, I will never let you believe otherwise." I kissed her forehead and rocked her gently, the sound of the ocean just beyond the window. And right then, I knew. This wasn't about survival anymore. It was about giving her a life where she knew she mattered, even if I had to fight the whole world to do it. By the time lunch was served, Lily was starting to get restless. At first, it was just little whimpers, the kind that meant she was tired or hungry or both. I bounced her gently in my lap, whispering soft words into her hair, trying to soothe her. But the noise, the people, the energy of the party, it was too much. Her whimpers turned into soft cries, then louder. I leaned over to my mother. "She's hungry. I'm going to take her to the room to feed her." Frances gave me a tight-lipped nod but didn't say a word. Around us, conversation slowed just a bit. I could feel it. The way people paused their bites, glanced over, then quickly looked away like my child's crying was something shameful, something impolite. I didn't care. I held Lily close and quietly left the terrace. In the room, it was quiet. I rocked her as I mixed the formula, my hands shaking slightly. Not from the crying, but from the weight of the afternoon. From the weight of being so clearly not wanted. When I finally sat down and fed her, she calmed immediately, resting her tiny hand against my chest like she always did. I kissed the top of her head and closed my eyes. "You're doing great, baby girl," I whispered. "Mommy's got you." After she finished, I wiped her face and held her a little longer. I didn't want to go back out there. I didn't want to feel small again. But I also didn't want them to think I was hiding. So I stood up, straightened my dress, and carried Lily back to the terrace. Most of the guests were finishing dessert. The party was winding down. I spotted Haley chatting with Tom's parents, her smile still perfect, still glowing. A few people glanced my way as I returned. Frances walked toward me before I even reached the table. "Is she calm now?" She asked like she was commenting on the weather. "She's fine," I said, adjusting Lily on my shoulder. Frances stared at her for a long second. Then, without waiting for an answer, she reached forward and said, "Let me take her for a little fresh air. She's probably bored of being around all this noise." I hesitated. Everything inside me screamed no. But something about the way she said it, so casual, so expected, froze me. I didn't want to make a scene, not again. Not in front of all these people who already looked at me like I was the problem. So I let go. "Just for a minute," I said quietly. She took Lily in her arms and turned toward the balcony. I followed, a few steps behind. The air out there was sharper now, the breeze picking up off the ocean. Frances walked to the railing, right to the edge. She stood there, holding Lily, staring out at the waves crashing violently against the rocks far below. "Mom," I called, my voice barely above a whisper. "Give her back." She didn't turn around. I stepped closer. "Mom, please, give Lily back to me." Her shoulders tensed. Her fingers gripped Lily tighter. The wind blew her hair across her face, wild and messy, but she didn't move to fix it. She just stood there, unmoving, like something had taken over her. Then, without looking at me, she said, "You always make the wrong choices." Her voice was strange, detached, like she wasn't speaking to me, but to something inside her. I took another step forward. Guests nearby were beginning to notice. Conversations died down. Haley looked up. Tom stood. The room shifted. Frances turned slowly, her eyes glassy, and looked at me like I wasn't even her daughter. "You married into the Green family, after everything they did to us." I froze. "What are you talking about?" "They ruined your father. Ruined everything. And now you've brought their blood back into this family." Her gaze dropped to Lily, who was still nestled quietly in her arms. "This child is a curse." "Mom, stop," I begged, stepping closer. "Lily is a baby. She's your granddaughter." "She's not good for this family," Frances whispered. "She will destroy everything we've tried to rebuild." "Please," I said, my voice cracking. "Just give her back to me. Don't do this." But it was too late. Before I could reach her, before anyone could move, she lifted Lily above the railing and let go. Time collapsed. I screamed. I lunged. But I wasn't fast enough. Lily's little red dress fluttered in the wind like a torn ribbon as her small body disappeared over the edge. And in that moment, everything inside me shattered. I don't remember screaming. I just remember the sound of it. Raw, broken, coming from somewhere deep inside me as I ran to the railing and looked over. My hands clutched the stone so hard I thought my fingers would break. But all I saw were waves, crashing violently against the rocks below. Lily's red dress was gone. Her tiny body was gone. And for a second I couldn't breathe. People behind me were shouting. Someone screamed for help. Haley was crying. Tom was yelling at the hotel staff to call the police, the Coast Guard, anyone. But none of it registered. My world had narrowed down to the empty space beyond that railing. I fell to my knees, clutching the cold stone, and sobbed so hard it felt like my heart was splitting open. "My baby," I kept crying. "My baby. Lily." Everything was a blur. The sky, the people, the voices around me. I barely noticed the hotel manager speaking into a radio, or the sirens beginning to wail in the distance. I didn't care about any of it. My daughter had just been taken from me, thrown like she didn't matter, like she was nothing. And then, through the chaos, someone shouted, "I see something." I turned my head, dazed, unsure if I'd heard it right. One of the staff was pointing toward the cliffside. "Down there, there's someone. He's holding something." Everyone rushed to the edge, and I followed with shaking legs, heart pounding so loudly I could barely hear. Far below, standing on a narrow rock ledge just above the surf, was a man, an older man, with a fishing rod in one hand and a bundle of red in the other. "Is that—" Haley gasped. Tom grabbed a pair of binoculars from one of the hotel staff. "It's Lily," he said. "It's her. She's moving." I collapsed into his arms, sobbing uncontrollably. "She's alive. Oh God, she's alive." The rescue team arrived seconds later. Ropes, radios, helmets, all moving in a rush. They scanned the cliffs, found the fastest descent path, and coordinated with the fisherman, who stood still as stone, holding Lily like she was the most precious thing in the world. One of the rescuers leaned over the edge, speaking into a headset. "She's conscious. She's crying. We're moving in now." I felt like I couldn't move, couldn't think. I was still trembling when they helped me into the ambulance. Minutes felt like hours until finally, a rescuer climbed back, up with Lily wrapped in a blanket. She was crying, loud, angry, beautiful cries, and I had never heard a more perfect sound. They placed her in my arms, and I held her against me like I was never letting go again. In the ambulance, I rocked her as she cried, and I cried too, whispering over and over, "It's okay, baby. Mommy's here. You're safe. You're safe now." At the hospital, everything moved quickly. Nurses, doctors, lights overhead. They checked her, cleaned her up, examined every inch of her tiny body. Scrapes, bruises, but no broken bones, no head trauma, nothing critical, just a miracle. I was sitting next to her bed when a nurse came in and said softly, "There's someone here to see you. The man who found her." I stood up, my legs still unsteady, and when the door opened, in walked an older man in a faded navy sweater and khaki pants. His face was weathered, and his hands looked like they'd spent years pulling nets and tying lines. But his eyes were soft, kind. "Miss," he said, removing his cap, "I just wanted to check if your little girl is all right." I walked over and hugged him without thinking. "You saved her," I whispered. "How can I ever thank you?" He looked down, clearly a bit embarrassed. "I was just fishing. Same spot I always go to on Sundays. Something bright fell from above, and I don't know. I reached out and caught her. Just like that." "Just like that," I repeated, still trying to believe it. "I guess," he said, smiling gently. "God put me there." I looked back at Lily, who was finally asleep in the hospital bed, her tiny chest rising and falling with each breath. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I let myself breathe too. Because somehow, in the moment when everything was supposed to be lost, she had been caught. She had been saved. And so had I. The next morning, just as Lily was being discharged, from the hospital my phone rang. I almost didn't answer it. The screen said Frances Campbell, and for a second, I just stared at her name. After everything that had happened, after what she'd done, I wasn't sure I ever wanted to hear her voice again. But something made me pick up. Her voice was different. Shaky. Weak. "Diana, I need to tell you everything. Please. Come, see me." "Where are you calling from?" I asked, my voice flat. "The police station," she said. "They let me make one call." There was a pause. Then, almost whispering, she asked, Is she okay?" I couldn't hide the edge in my voice. "She almost died because of you." "I know," she said, barely audible. "But there's something I need to say. Something important. About Robert. That caught me off guard." "Robert? Just come." The call ended, and I stood there frozen. It had been over a year since Robert left. I hadn't heard a word from him, hadn't seen his face, hadn't gotten even a single text. And now my mother, who had just tried to kill our daughter, was saying his name like it was all connected. I didn't know what to think, but I needed answers. I called Haley and asked if she could watch Lily for a little while. Her voice was quiet, but steady. "Of course. She's my niece. I'll take good care of her." When I walked into the hospital lobby, I wasn't prepared for what I saw. Robert was standing there. He looked older, tired. His black hair was a little longer, his jaw covered in stubble. But those eyes, those warm brown eyes I used to know, they hadn't changed. I stopped in my tracks. "Diana," he said, stepping forward. "I heard about Lily. I saw it on the news. I had to come." "What right do you have to be here?" I snapped. "You left. You disappeared. You never even met her." "I know," he said, swallowing hard, "and I hate myself for it. But please, let me explain. Just give me 5 minutes." I didn't answer. I just turned and walked toward the exit. And to my surprise, he followed. "I'm coming with you," he said quietly. It's about my mother, and yours. We took a cab to the police station, silence sitting heavy between us. Halfway there, he finally spoke. My real name is Robert Green, he said, from Green Enterprises. I turned to him, stunned. That was one of the biggest companies in Boston. A name I knew. A name everyone knew. When I met you, he said, I didn't want you to fall in love with my background. I wanted you to love me for me. So I kept things quiet. Used only my last name. Tried to keep distance from the family business. But when I told my mother I wanted to marry you. He paused. She lost it. She said your family was the enemy, that the Campbells ruined our company years ago, that your father tried to destroy ours. My stomach twisted. I never knew any of that. She said Lily was a curse, a sign. She gave me an ultimatum. Leave you, or be cut off entirely. No money, no access, no support. I panicked. I left. And I've regretted it every single day since. When we got to the station, a guard led us into the visiting room. Frances was already there, sitting behind the glass, pale and hollow. Her hands trembled as she reached for the phone. I picked up the receiver. Robert sat beside me, silent. She looked at him, then at me. You married into the Green family? She said. Do you even understand what that meant for us? No, I said. I didn't, and clearly neither did he. She closed her eyes, taking a breath. 30 years ago, your father tried to partner with Green Enterprises. He thought it would save his company. But they backed out last minute and went to our competitors. Your father lost everything. He blamed himself. He drank. And then he died. Her voice cracked. I blame them. All of them. And when you married one of them, I couldn't handle it. I kept it buried, but it ate away at me. And Lily? I asked softly. She's a baby, Mom. I was broken, she whispered. I saw her delays as punishment. I convinced myself she was a curse, the final blow to this family. But she's not. I see that now. And I hate what I did. I hate the person I became. I didn't say anything. I just looked at her. For the first time in my life, I didn't see her as the powerful, icy woman who always made me feel like I wasn't enough. I saw someone crushed by years of bitterness, a woman who had let pain fester so long it twisted into something monstrous. I didn't forgive her, not then, but for the first time. I understood. 3 months later, life looked nothing like it used to. The days were still hard sometimes. Early mornings, therapy sessions, bills, the usual. But the weight didn't crush me the way it once did. There was a softness now, a hope. Something I didn't think I'd feel again. Robert and I were rebuilding slowly. We didn't jump back into anything. We talked a lot, cried some, argued a little, and learned to hold space for each other's pain. He was trying, really trying, to be the kind of father Lily needed, the kind of man I deserved the first time. And Lily, oh, Lily, she was thriving. Physical therapy had started to make a difference. Her movements were still slower than most, babies her age, but she was getting stronger. Her little eyes lit up more often. She laughed when I made silly faces, and one afternoon, sitting on a blanket in the backyard, she looked up at me with those big blue eyes and said it, clear as day. Mama. I froze. Just stared at her for a second, like I had imagined it. But then she said it again, this time with a soft little smile. Mama. And I broke. I held her so close, kissed her face, let the tears fall freely because in that moment, It was like the world gave me everything back all at once. I wasn't broken. She wasn't broken. We were healing. Together. Robert's mother, Eleanor, had been distant at first. Cold, polite, formal. But something shifted when she met Lily for the first time. She came with stiff posture, ready to endure the visit. But the moment Lily reached out and touched her hand, something melted in her. She sat beside her, quietly, for nearly an hour. A week later, she asked to visit again, then again. And one afternoon, she said to me, "I used to think bloodlines mattered most, but now I see it's love that changes people." Her voice cracked a little when she said it, and I just nodded, holding back my own tears. Then came the wedding. We decided to do it small, just close friends and family. We wanted something simple, honest, something that felt like us. Frances was granted special permission to attend, under supervision. She had been receiving psychiatric care while serving her sentence. Haley visited her every week. I went once a month. It wasn't easy, and it still isn't. But she was trying. And sometimes, trying matters more than perfect. When she walked into the church, escorted by 2 guards, the room got quiet. But she didn't flinch. She took her seat and waited. After the ceremony, she asked to speak. She stood up, hands trembling, and spoke from a single sheet of paper. But after the first line, she stopped reading. She looked out at everyone and said it from her heart. "For years, I let bitterness run my life. I carried pain until it became poison, and I nearly destroyed the only people who ever truly loved me. I will never be able to undo what I did, but I can own it, and I can choose every day to become someone better." Then Eleanor stood up. She looked around the room and said, "I, too, held on to the past far too long. I judged people I never took the time to know. But Lily taught me how wrong I was." The 2 women looked at each other, and for a moment, something unspoken passed between them. Not total forgiveness, not perfect peace, but understanding. They reached out and shook hands. And in that quiet exchange, the weight of 30 years started to lift. I stood beside Robert, holding Lily in my arms, and I realized, true family isn't about who you share blood with. It's about who shows up, who chooses growth, who decides, even after everything, to love anyway. Lily wasn't a curse. She was the bridge. The small, beautiful miracle that stitched 2 broken families back together, and I'll never stop being grateful for her. If you've ever felt like the black sheep, like the one who didn't belong, or if you've ever had to stand alone to protect what you love, tell me your story in the comments. I see you. I really do. And if you felt something in this story, don't forget to subscribe. There's more to come.